Recorded Books presents an unabridged recording of Corduroy Mansions by Alexander McCall Smith, narrated by Simon Preble and directed by Chris Thies.
Chapter 1. In the Bathroom. Passing off, thought William. Spanish sparkling wine. Filthy stuff, he thought. Filthy. Passed itself off as champagne. Japanese whiskey, Glen Yakamoto, was served as scotch. Inferior hard cheese from mafia-run factories in Catania was sold to the unsuspecting as parmesan. Lots of things were passed off in one way or another, and now, as he stood before the bathroom mirror, he wondered if he could be passed off too. He looked at himself, or such part of himself as the small mirror encompassed. Just his face, really, and a bit of neck. It was a 51-year-old face chronologically, but would it pass, he wondered, for a 40-something-year-old face? He looked more closely. There were lines around the eyes and at the edge of the mouth, but the cheeks were smooth enough. He pulled at the skin around the eyes, and the lines disappeared. There were doctors who could do that for you, of course, tighten things up, nip and tuck. But the results, he thought, were usually risible. He had a customer who'd gone off to some clinic and come back with a face like a no-play mask, all smoothed out and flat. It was sad, really. And as for male wigs, with their stark, obvious hairlines, all one wanted to do was to reach forward and give them a tug. It was quite hard to resist, actually. And once, as a student, and when drunk, he had done just that. He had tugged at the wig of a man in a bar, and the man had cried. He still felt ashamed of himself for that. Best not to think about it. No, he was weathering well enough, and it was far more dignified to let nature take its course, to weather in a National Trust sort of way. He looked again at his face. Not bad. The sort of face, he thought, that would be hard to describe on the wanted poster, if he were ever to do anything to merit the attention of the police, which he had not, of course, apart from the usual sort of thing that made a criminal of everybody. "Wanted for illegal parking," he muttered. "William Edward French, 51, average height, very slightly overweight, if you don't mind our saying so. No distinguishing features, not dangerous, but approach with caution." He smiled. "And if I were to describe myself in one of those Lonely Hearts ads? Wine dealer, widower, solvent, late 40s-ish, GSOH, reasonable shape, interested in music, dining out, etc., etc. WLTM, presentable, lively woman with a view to LTR. That would be about it. Of course, one had to be careful about the choice of words in these things. There were codes, and one might not be aware of them. Solvent was clear enough. It meant that one had sufficient money to be comfortable, and that was true enough. He would not describe himself as well-off, but he was certainly solvent. Well-off, he had read somewhere, now meant disposable assets of over— how much? More than he had, he suspected. And reasonable shape? Well, if that was not strictly speaking true at present, it would be shortly. William had joined a gym and been allocated a personal trainer. If his shape at present was not ideal, it soon would be, once the personal trainer had worked on him. It would take a month or two, he thought, not much more than that. So perhaps one might say, shortly to be in reasonable shape. Now what about would like to meet presentable, lively woman? Well, presentable was a pretty low requirement. Virtually anybody could be presentable if they made at least some effort. Lively was another matter. One would have to be careful about lively, because it could possibly be a code for insatiable, and that would not do. Who would want to meet an insatiable woman? My son, thought William suddenly. That's exactly the sort of woman Eddie would want to meet. The thought depressed him. William lived with his son. There had been several broad hints dropped that Eddie might care to move out and share with other 20-somethings, and recently a friend of Eddie's had even asked him if he wanted to move into a shared flat, but these hints had apparently fallen on unreceptive ground. "It's quite an adventure, Eddie," William said. "Everybody at your stage of life shares a flat, like those girls downstairs. Look at the fun they have. Most people do it."